And it hits me, oh my gosh, this is that triangle.
You know, there's explanation for everything that occurred in the Rendlesham Forest incident that doesn't involve aliens at all.
It was completely silent. It comes right over our heads.
He saw a classic flying saucer, really, standing in the clearing.
He turned over to my father and held his hand, and he looked in his eyes, and he said, "We're not alone."
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host. Michael Loke will not be joining us today because of a scheduling conflict, but being the good egg that he is, he wrote an updated news blog that you'll find on our website, podcastufo.com. This is podcast number 64 with Dr. Roger Leir. We'll discuss the amazing Turkey UFO incident as well as implants. It's a great show. I hope you enjoy it. After this tune by Carrie Lloyd Whitehouse. How are you, Dr. Leir?
Oh, I'm fine, Martin. It's good to be with you.
Yes, thank you. And you have a fan going there because where are you? In Southern California?
Yes, very hot and humid Southern California at the moment.
So I would like to talk to you today, of course, about what you're known for, the alien implants. And your website is alienscalpel.com, right?
That is correct.
But I would really want to talk to you about the Turkey UFO event because to me that is one of the most important sightings that I think there is. It's so documented. There's several witnesses, many witnesses to this same craft.
Yes, there is. And it was seen, you have to remember, 3 years in a row.
Right. And were you living in Turkey? And if so, how long did you live there?
No, I was not living in Turkey. I was invited over for several conferences. I'd been there a number of times, and during the conferences themselves, there was so many UFOs that traveled over the conference center that really I got tired looking at UFOs. It was like standing out on a balcony watching the traffic on the freeway. Every single major news truck was at the conference center, and they were filming them all day long, and it was reported on the national news all over Turkey, but in the rest of the world, it just seems to not make it to the U.S.
Wow. You had UFO conferences and UFOs came to watch, it sounds like almost.
Well, I don't know if they came to watch because although they may have slowed down for the event, they, like a freeway, either they were heading someplace and they just happened to fly over the event site, or that they were trying to make, citizens of this world know that they're there. Now, why do they pick Turkey? I don't know. I've seen similar things in other places in the world, such as in Brazil. Mm-hmm. The sightings in Brazil are tremendous. The sightings in Ecuador, Chile, Argentina, Uruguay. As you know, not to get too far off subject, but I was able to testify at the citizens' hearing in Washington, D.C., and that was 5 days in front of a congressional committee, which is not easy. And we had about 40 witnesses, and the congressional experience that we had before us on the committee represented at least 80 years of congressional experience. Well, one of the questions that was asked on quote-unquote the foreign day, when we had foreign politicians from all over the world, they were asked towards the end of the session on a scale of 1 to 10, which one of your countries would be considered a 1 and which would be considered a 10. And so they talked amongst each other, and it was decided without a doubt that the country of Uruguay was number 1.
Wow. And
one of the things that they did in Uruguay was that ununiformed representative of the Hawaiian Air Force would go into high schools and they would lecture about the presence of extraterrestrials on Earth, the craft that was flying around, what they look like, what the occupants of these vehicles look like. They talked about abductions, etc., and it was just wide open. So that was number 1. So, we asked where the United States would fit in that scale, and the congressional committee said, well, probably around 29th.
Wow. I believe that. When you were talking about these flying over the event there, these were daylight sightings?
Yes, daylight sightings.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. And let's talk about the famed UFO that was filmed, and how did you get involved with doing that while you were there?
Well, once the conference was over, we decided to go down the European coast. Now, Turkey is different than other countries because it lies on 2 continents. Part of Turkey is in Asia and part of Turkey is in Europe. So, and it's totally surrounded by water. Everywhere you look, there's a water or an estuary or a bay and a mixture of oceans and so on. So we decided to go down the European coast, and there was a area that was made available to us to spend a few nights at that area. It was in the city of Kumburgas. And we stayed up from about midnight till 5 o'clock in the morning, filming out over the water. Now, we did a very careful analysis of the surroundings prior to the time when we actually did any filming. We checked with binoculars to see if there was any ships in that area that were passing by, any light interferences that would be coming from land, lighthouses and so on. And there was absolutely nothing. One of the years, I don't remember, I think it was 2009, Jaime Maussan from Mexico was there with his own film team. So the Turkish team was not the only one that did the filming. So I have to describe the night because we're standing on an elevated deck, which has nothing between us and the water. So there was a rather warm night, and there was a very, very bright full moon. So the camera we were using had a 300 millimeter lens and an electronic doubler. In other words, we were able to push or close in on the object 600 times magnification.
Wow.
So we started by looking at the moon, focusing on the moon. Now, the moon was very bright. And under these circumstances, it's just the absolute worst time to go look for UFOs because the light from the moon pollutes the surrounding sky. It's like, trying to film something at night in the sky in the middle of a city. You get, this light pollution. So I personally think, my goodness, we're not going to see anything tonight. But anyway, we saw a little bright dot to the left and below the moon. And then after getting our focus on the moon, we moved the camera over to this little bright light and then started to zoom in on it, so to speak. And then when we got probably 3/4 of the way magnification, and we're looking through the viewfinder and also recording this on a monitor, we see that this light is not a plane, it's not a star, it's not a helicopter. It has a shape to it, which was cylindrical in the front, and then it would turn from time to time, and you could see that it was probably crescent-shaped. And as we pushed on what we considered the front of the object, that's when we were so startled why we just couldn't believe what we were seeing. And, of course, I was one of the ones that was looking through the lens of the camera and also on the monitor. But this was a craft that had whatever you choose to call them, viewing ports, windows, whatever. 3, one a big one in the front and one towards each side. And the craft externally was being lit by the moon. So you could see that it was a shiny, sort of metallic material. Mm-hmm. But what you could see through these ports was light that was emanating from the internal portion of the craft. And standing there in these portals were some beings. And some were the stereotypical bumper sticker grays. Mm-hmm. So they were, obviously doing something. And they knew we were there filming them. It was like, hello, go ahead, film away.
Wow. Now, this thing just seemed to hover in one place, and it seemed to do the same thing in other videos in the past.
Yes. It repeated this, as I said, for 3 years. And we don't know why, but no intelligent, and I'm not comparing that with human intelligence, but no advanced, let's say, intelligent civilization is going to do something like that without a motive. I mean, that's a given. So obviously, this was staged as a demonstration.
And also, they're face on in the videos you see. Now, did you actually see the craft turn at all, or was it always just square to you?
For the most time, it was front on towards us, but it did turn, which I would say to the left, so that you could see that it was not a saucer, but more of a boomerang-shaped craft, very similar to what was described that had crashed in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. Mm-hmm. Now, the video from all 3 of these sightings over the 3 years was all sent to the University of Istanbul, which is a government-run university, and some high-quality optical analysts looked at the film and did an analysis. And then they came out with a written statement that the film was not photoshopped, it was not doctored, it was the real thing, and what we had filmed was a craft of unknown origin with unknown occupants. And that was the official statement that went out on television and all the newspapers. We then participated in numerous national television programs. They brought in critics, they brought in debunkers, they brought in all sorts of experts, optical experts, and so on. But it was never proven to be anything other than what it was. Secondarily, the last footage that was done in 2009 rather, was sent to a Chilean videographer, video analyst. And he, instead of analyzing the craft itself, his major function was that he looked at the beings. Now, as you may or may not know, there are 30 frames that go by the aperture of a video camera per second. Each frame is then composed of 2 pictures, which are called video fields. And the analyst in Chile had a apparatus for dividing each frame into each one of its segmental fields. So for every 30 frames, you got 60 fields. And then he went ahead and did geometric and optical drawings from what he saw. And he told us, the report is up on my website, alienscalpel.com, about what he saw that these non-human beings were doing while we were filming them.
Was there movement? I'm sorry, was there movement involved?
Yes, there was movement. They were, working with some kind of electronic equipment. They all were not grays. Some had very large proboscis, noses. Others looked slightly different, and they were engaged in different activities. Who knows? Maybe they were recording us to take to their video analysts to see if the humans really look like us. I don't know.
If we're real, that is, yeah.
Yeah, maybe they thought we were phony or robots or whatever they had.
Hoaxes.
Civilizations.
Yeah. Speaking of, earlier you mentioned that you talked with skeptics and all kinds of different people. What has been the skeptics and debunkers' remarks in general over the years about this?
The first remark that came out was that what we were filming was reflections of a lighthouse that was on a point some 20 miles away.
Sounds like Rendlesham Forest to me.
Yeah. They could have said swamp gas or something else. Others said that because of the clarity of the shots and the clarity of what the beings look like, that somebody had to draw these and insert them, into the video. But just the biggest, when the government comes out of Turkey and makes a statement that the film is real, I don't think they do that for a hoax. And then when you send it completely to another country, and he comes back with an in-depth report, and the guy is an optical physicist, and he's telling you that, what you're seeing is real and in greater detail with what the university had done. I mean, you got to believe this is a real piece of footage.
Now, how many witnesses were with you when you were filming that evening?
There must have been, I would say, at least a dozen, all of which took their turns looking through the camera. And as I said, Jaime Maussan was filming it with another camera. He had his crew There were two other individuals there that were from the United States who were with me. They also looked through the camera. And then we had the people from Turkey that were associated with the conference. And also there was the owner of the camera, plus several other people who were in the photographic line that wanted to see it also. So there was at least a dozen people that were there.
When other people were filming previously, had anyone had close-up shots of the beings inside?
To tell you the truth, I don't remember. 2009 and now it's 2013. I just, I'm getting old and my mind is not what it used to be. So there are some of the details of things that I've forgotten. And there's continuously new stuff that happens all the time. Like on the 4th of July, myself and 10 other people witnessed a UFO that went right along with the fireworks right here in Thousand Oaks. Huh. And it was filmed by numerous people. And there was a fellow from London who was sitting next to me filming the fireworks, and he filmed the UFO, and he had one of these new fancy phone cameras, and you could take the two fingers and instantly blow up the object, and it was a stereotypical disc with portholes.
Going back to the one in Turkey, is that craft being seen within the last year or so? Are you aware of?
I don't believe so. Number one, there hasn't been any conferences there for a couple of years. And the craft are still being filmed, but as far as I know, I don't even think anybody has gone back to Cumbergus since 2009 and tried to repeat filming it. The situation over there now is a bit tenuous because of the impending Middle Eastern situation. Countries. Turkey is a country that sits, precariously close to where we may be flirting with a tremendous war.
Right. Where would you say, besides Turkey, or I'm not really sure what makes Turkey such a center for so much UFO activity, but besides that, you said Uruguay. Do you know why? Any idea, any speculation why there's so many sightings in certain areas?
Well, we do know that there's been a tremendous amount of sightings as of late over areas where there are uranium mines or uranium mines under development or enrichment reactors. Whoever or whatever they are seem to be extremely concerned about what we do with our nuclear program. No, I'm not just saying the United States, but anywhere in the world. So you talk about concentrations of UFOs over, for example, mountains that surround Afghanistan, Pakistan. There's large amounts of UFOs seen. And as I said, why they're in some countries and not seen as much in others, I really don't have a clue. And then what we're seeing, we should mention, people see a lot of things, but they're not all today non-terrestrial craft, because we know that we spent $63 trillion on a black budget, and they say that black budget science is at least 100 years ahead of academic science. So Lord knows what we're flying.
Now let's talk about your Forte implants a little bit. Before we started recording, you mentioned to me that you get a ton of email. Is that mostly related to the implants?
Yes, it is. And I run about 5,000 emails behind per day.
Per day?
Per day.
How did you ever see my email? Wow.
I have, fortunately, I do have help. And we go through the email in mass. I'm thinking about hiring the NSA.
I think they already know. They're already
no, they have a good system, and if we could, institute their system, why 5,000 would be nothing.
Yeah.
But anyway, we do go through them, and a certain amount of them are just get automatically deleted. Mm-hmm. If we recognize or check the potential of the ones that we think we need to respond to, then they will get a response. So I'm sorry. That's all I can do is apologize. I just am one person, like Peter Davenport at the UFO Reporting Center. I'm one person trying to do the job of many, many people, and I do have a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so if there's someone out there that wants to make a contribution, why, go through the website and please do it, because we not only need help, but we can use the finances.
Tax deductible, too.
And it's 100% tax deductible, because we are a 501c3 legal nonprofit organization.
Now, for the people that contact you, and you say you weed through them, how many would you say that you think are legitimate, more or less?
The ones that we respond to maybe around 30%.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And out of the people that contact you, how many people are actually looking to have these things removed? I know it's probably an odd question, but
well, it's an odd question, but it's a high percentage. And some people have ulterior motives. They're looking for their 3 minutes of fame in anything. The next group you get are people who think that whether it be the U.S. government, the English government, the French, or whoever, have selected them for some kind of an experiment in which they're implanting things in their body. So you have that group of people. And then you have those who they just know for sure they have something in their body, but they don't know who did it, and they don't know where it is, and they've never had an x-ray, and they don't have any pain, and they don't have any symptoms, and they haven't the slightest idea where it is, and they want to know what to do about it.
And they won't see a regular doctor about it.
No, or they won't tell anybody about it except our group, because people will think they're crazy. There's a certain number of people who have been in jail, mental institutions, that become addicted to drugs, that are alcoholics, and an array of others who, if we listen to them and listen to the story of their lives, we realize that they are an abductee, and a certain percentage of these do have an implant. So we figure the total percentage of the abductee population runs between 10 and 15%, which, strangely enough, is a similar percentage to what we as humans do with the lesser animal kingdom. I mean, we tag about 10 or 15% of bears to find out their hibernation habits, their metabolism, what they digest, how long they sleep, and so on. Same thing with mammals, fish. How far does the salmon swim when it goes to Russia and it comes back and it finds its own river to spawn in, and so on. So the percentage is about the same. So now we've had several nuclear physicists look at the materials that these implants are made out of. And Robert Kuntz, K-O-O-N-T-Z, who's a very well-respected nuclear physicist, formerly with the Navy, states that the materials that the implants are made out of come from approximately one-third away across the Milky Way galaxy, and that their civilization is probably 80 to 1 million years older than we are.
Wow, he's actually made that statement.
Yes, and this is made by mathematical formulas which are a bit over my head, but all I can tell you that it's based on mathematical constant having to do with the age of the Big Bang and the time it takes from the development of one isotope of one element to become another. And it takes maybe 100, 200, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years for these changes to occur. So he's made two mathematical constants. One is through space-time and the other has to do with age.
How many implants have you actually physically removed from patients?
We have performed 16 surgeries and have produced 17 objects since one individual had two. We are getting ready very shortly to do the next case.
Now, you just mentioned what this nuclear physicist said about the properties. What kind of scientific tests have been performed already on these?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer because unless you're a material scientist, I would have to spend several days on the phone explaining the tests. But
okay,
just putting it in sort of layman's language, number one, we find that the base metal used in the implants is meteoric iron.
Wow.
Now, what's the difference between iron and meteoric iron? The difference is basically the ratio of nickel to iron. Let's look, for example, at what are called isotopic ratios. All metals or all elements are composed of various subparts which are called isotopes. The isotopes have numbers, and that represents the numbers of protons and neutrons that are in the nucleus of that particular atom. We all know what U-235 is, I think, because we know we like to make bombs out of it. But there's also U-236, that's uranium-236, U-234, and so on. So if we mine uranium anywhere on Earth, the ratio of 234 to 235, et cetera, would be relatively the same within 2%. If we mined uranium that came from the moon, from a meteorite, from Mars, where we have some idea what their isotopic ratios are like, then we could say those ratios are isotopic in nature. So we find a matrix of meteoric iron, we find non-terrestrial isotopic ratios, we find what are called rare earth metals, such as europium, thorium, thesium, wow, where they only represent a tiny, tiny part of the Earth's environment. So those are called rare metals. In one case, we found one isotope of uranium, which is relatively impossible. The next thing of scientific nature that is one of the most important and modern findings is that we find what are called CNTs, or carbon nanotubes. And this is a structure that 8 to 10 years ago was believed by scientists did not exist in nature and could not be made. And there was a long, continuous argument that went on for years, saying that this was an impossibility, and finally, what do you know, they were able to be made in a laboratory. So today, CNTs are being used by the aircraft industry. They're being used in various forms of advanced electronics. They're being used by the space industry to strengthen metals because they are the strongest known substance known to man. There's talk of building a space tower out of them in which we could launch a vehicle from over a mile up, therefore saving a tremendous amount of liquid or solid rocket propellant because we wouldn't be defying the amount of gravity that we would on the surface of the Earth. Japan has a company that's working on them, weaving them into fiber to use in the clothing manufacturing business so that a woman will be able to, let's say, change the color of her clothes. It'll keep her warm in the summer and cool in the summer, and vast other applications which are largely in the hands of commercial electronic enterprises and, of course, in the hands of the black budget.
Wow. You want to take a break and give that dog a milk bone?
Why not?
We're just about done here. If the dog sounds like he settled down a little bit. But we're just about out of time here, but I do have a couple of questions. A lot of people that, claim to have been abducted, they talk about scars. Would that have anything to do with the implants at all?
Well, that's an interesting question, Martin, because in the beginning, we thought, for example, the scoop mark, where some material had been taken out of the skin, might be used in coating the implant, because these implants, when you look at them biologically after they've been removed in the surrounding tissue in the body, we see there's no rejection reaction, there's no inflammatory reaction, and there's a large amount of nerve cells present, which shouldn't be there. But now we've sort of changed our mind, because you see, as time moves on, the equipment for studying things becomes better and better and better. Even the old electron microscope that we had 10 or 15 years ago is now a very, very archaic tool. We can get magnifications, for example, at 10,000 kilovolts up to 750 to 1,000,000 times magnification. Well, you couldn't do that, 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. So as science advances, we're able to learn more. So that's how we got, we discovered that these objects contain these CNTs. And then they also contain other strange structures. One are what we call orthorhombic crystals. These are crystals that are rectangular, varying shape. We find gold spheres, solid gold spheres. We don't know what their function is. We find apertures in the metal. They're like tunnels, but they're only one atom in width. And so far, we have not been able to look down the tunnel to see what's in there. But back to the marks. So we, as I said, thought for some time that parts of the skin were being used to prevent rejection reaction. But now we've actually discovered a phase, we call it a phase for lack of a better word, that shows the inorganic material, the metallurgy of the material itself, becoming organic. Now, there's no way in the world, I don't even think in black budget science, that we are able to do that. And I've kind of had this verified because I've been to a few black budget labs, and when a bunch of scientists are in a room looking through their instruments at these objects, and the lab director standing out in the hall with his hands on his hips, he's not happy with these guys looking at stuff that's non-governmental, but still being paid on a governmental payroll. Mm-hmm. So if they're that interested in looking at this stuff, then most probably they don't have it.
If you don't mind me asking, where are these implants now? Are they in a safe place?
They're always in a safe place, because most of the time, if there's, eventually you start with an object, it's removed in toto. We try and preserve it in the best possible fashion. And then we subject the exterior to the maximum amount of examination. Mm-hmm. It's only at that point when we began to use things like electron microscopy and start taking an electron beam and looking inside. Then the object, because of destructive analysis, gets smaller and smaller and smaller until some of these we have almost nothing left. But we always retain as much we can of the sample. So basically what I'm saying to you is that most of the time they're in laboratories. And we use the same or similar or even better chain of forensic evidence that the police department uses. And, if it's in a container, nobody opens that container unless it's being filmed. They sign for it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So every step of the way, our forensic abilities have to remain that way in order to have a viable scientific study. If anybody could do whatever they wanted with these, I mean, we wouldn't be able to prove anything.
Now, I heard that these things can move. I heard people talking about that. Have you ever tried to surgically go after one that was moving inside?
Yes.
Wow.
And I have that on video also. We do videotape all the surgeries. Or now, of course, with the new media, they're not videotaped anymore. They're digitized. But we had a lady with a marble-sized object in the arm, and when you put your finger near it, it would move out of the way within a diameter of a circle that was about an inch and a half, or about 2.5 inches. And after a while, when I put my finger on her arm in a place, let's say maybe an inch away from the object would actually come to my finger, like come doggy. And it would actually follow my finger around her arm. It's the recording of this is so hairy that even today when I look at it, I can't believe what I'm seeing. And it took four hands to get it out.
Wow. Roger, the thing that comes to mind through this whole conversation is this, out of almost anything I've ever heard in this field, seems like such a smoking gun.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. There's people out there who are calling, looking, asking, begging, cheating, lying, stealing, whatever they must do for the so-called smoking gun, when we have the physical evidence to show that the human race is being interfered with, let's say, or manipulated by an advanced species, leaving clear-cut physical evidence behind. Now, I'm just coming out with a new book, which should be out probably in the next month and a half or so, I hope. And there's a section in the book, which is a pure scientific section with a warning. If you are not a degreed scientist, either a PhD or a master's degree, please don't bother to read the section, because I don't want to hear from you, and no other scientist does either.
Wow.
So it tells the whole story with all the scientific information. And then I can't tell you the name of the book because of an agreement with the publisher, but I can tell you that the foreword was written by Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut.
Great. What are the debunkers saying about implants? Are they talking about, I don't know if the word would be assist or something like that? Are they trying to explain it away as something your body would produce?
Well, yes, that's kind of a standard thing, but I've been around long enough with all the famous people, including Phil Klass and Mr. Smiley Face and, a few others. They by and large, don't bother with me. I don't know why. I did a television show. It was kind of a roundtable discussion with one of the comedians that was quite famous with Saturday Night Live, Kevin Nealon.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Kevin is one of these guys who, I don't know whether he believes or he doesn't believe or not, but he is a comedian and he's absolutely hilarious. Well, he set up this panel discussion, and there was a young lady there who sat down next to me, opened up her briefcase, took out a big black binder, and we introduced ourselves to each other. And she says, "Well, what's your claim to fame?" And I said, "Well, I guess I'm known for removing objects from individuals who allege alien abduction. And she says, "Oh, you mean implants?" And I said, "Yes, if that's what you choose to call them." So with that, she takes this binder, puts it on the table. I remember she's sitting next to me, so I can look at right exactly what she's reading. And she opens the binder up, goes down with her finger the table of contents, comes to the page that says alien implants, flips over to the page, and there it is.
She was all prepared.
Yeah, and I said, "What's your claim to fame?" And she says, "Oh, I'm a member of the Southern California division of the American Skeptics Society."
That's when you should have taken out your binder and flipped it open to the Skeptics section. Well, hey.
I did worse than that.
Okay.
I did a film. I produced a film in which we duplicated that scene in the film. And, of course, the actor in the film, when he sees me in possession of the black binder, gets very upset, begins to walk out. And I said, "Oh, come on, you're not a crybaby. Come back here and face it." That was my line.
Well, I really appreciate all your work, Roger, and thanks so much for enlightening us on that amazing footage that you were involved in. And it's been a real pleasure talking to you tonight.